No spin, no bias, no censorship. I'm Dan Wootton. This is Outspoken episode number 283. And as we head into another weekend of potential uprising against the invasion of our channel and our invaders being housed in taxpayer luxury hotels, experts, public figures, celebrities, sports people alike, now warning of imminent civil war.
I think we're 2 or 3 major incidents from the ignition of a civil war, and that's the last thing anybody wants. But who wants it? The establishment want it, so they can lock you down further, digital IDs, more surveillance, more intrusion in your life. That's what they want. We've got to find a way of uniting. Now, if that's getting called far right, then so be it.
And what about our forgotten cities being throttled by illegals, permanently changing our culture?
These men were forced from a bus for inappropriate activity with a young girl.
This is just ridiculous. This is absolutely ridiculous. Just go. It's women and children. Fuck off. Go away. Go away. Go away. Look at them. Oh! Get away. What's your door? Your door.
This man was allegedly caught filming children in a park.
I don't care if your mate's here or not. You don't come and do that.
Okay, you can delete it yourself.
Go
on the same deleted ones as well.
How do I delete it?
Yeah, he's got taking videos a little bit.
You're a fucking disgrace.
So I'll show you more shocking scenes from Liverpool's tragic decline, immigration, asylum, Islam, and institutional cowardice. Then we're joined by Peter Lloyd, the man behind that brilliant documentary for the New Culture Forum. Also coming up on the show today, James O'Brien, exposed by his own LBC colleagues, revealing how the egomaniac now has a godlike complex, forcing him into shocking on-air mistakes. Hypocrisy at woke ITV finally exposed as men are objectified in a way that would never be acceptable to the loose women. And Gregg Wallace speaks out about his cancellation, revealing the hypocrisy of the British bashing corporation that protected and shielded Jimmy Savile and Hugh Edwards while driving him to suicide. Then, in the uncancelled aftershow on Substack, royal YouTube sensation, according to Taz, reveals why the Daily Mail is turning on Prince William and Catherine, the Princess of Wales, while attempting to rehabilitate Prince Harry and Meghan Markle. You can sign up to watch right now at www.outspoken.live. Now, we have no Greatest Britain or Union Jackass today because this is a special episode, but don't worry, we will return on Monday, so start thinking about your nominations for then over the weekend. But now, let's go. There is a fascinating, if chilling, consensus emerging among British academics, celebrities, and mainstream politicians who are finally admitting what so many of us have been warning for so long. The UK is on the brink, and civil war is no longer an unrealistic concept. The Restorationist has even compiled a terrifying dossier of what they foresee as the final 6 months of the United Kingdom, writing, in the event Parliament's authority is no longer recognised or obeyed, we need an emergency continuity protocol for what to do next, planning which honours England's ancient constitutional traditions and maintains democratic order through legitimate means during institutional breakdown. The academic David Betts, who has long predicted civil war, posted this week, I've said it before, as have many others, but it bears repeating that the EU with Britain on a leash has morphed into the USSR. Sclerotic, corrupt, bankrupt ideologically, and soon literally unloved, unfeared, and unfixable. Now even sports people formerly on the left, like Joey Barton, are prepared to admit the reality of what we are facing.
I think we're 2 or 3 major incidents from the ignition of a civil war, and That's the last thing anybody wants. But who wants it? The establishment want it, so they can lock you down further, digital IDs, more surveillance, more intrusion in your life. That's what they want. We've got to find a way of uniting. Now, if that's getting called far right, then so be it. You know, if I'm against, I believe I'm from the left. I believe that's where I don't believe I've ever changed. I just believe the left's gone fucking insane. When we look at men winning women's Olympics boxing medals, case in point. I need to go no further. You all know exactly what we're on about. But the problem you've got is being right wing. All right, labelled right wing is standing up for the country's borders, standing up against illegal invaders come to this country who nobody knows about, burning and throwing their passports in the Channel or in France, and then sexually assaulting and harassing young girls in school uniforms.
So how did we get here? Well, the rising star of the Conservative Party admits it was their fault. Sure, it was started by Toby Blair, but turbocharged under the Tories. Here's Katie Lamb.
Imagine this bead represents 1,000 people, a sold-out West End theatre. For the 24 years up to 1997, net migration was 18,000 people. What about the 24 years since? 5.2 million. And just the last 4 years, 3.4 million. It's been completely out of control. Now let's look just at those who've arrived since 2021. 700,000 humanitarian visas, 280,000 workers, and 300,000 family visas. Most of these people didn't come to work and are paying no tax. Just these beads here in black might be earning enough to contribute more than they cost. But after 5 years here, most of these people can get something called indefinite leave to remain. ILR means stay indefinitely, get welfare, social housing, free healthcare, and it puts you on the path to citizenship. The government spends, on average, £34,000 looking after somebody in just the last year of their life. But very few of these people will contribute that in tax over the whole time that they're here, let alone enough for all of the welfare and services they and their family will get too. It's going to cost us hundreds of billions of pounds. That's roughly enough to cut a quarter of income tax for nearly a decade. This is insane. State support should only be for citizens who just can't afford for people to come here who can't support themselves. And if they are already here, they must not be able to go on benefits. Instead, they will need to leave.
And of course, those disturbing and dystopian numbers that Katie Lamb just outlined have had a real-world impact. A new documentary going viral for the New Culture Forum has this week revealed the devastating impact on Liverpool. Peter Lloyd, the presenter of Liverpool's tragic decline, immigration, asylum, Islam, and institutional cowardice, summed it up by posting, "Liverpool is dying. White population down 97% to 77%. Muslim population up from 5,000 to 30,000. Arabic, now city's second language. Rapes doubled since migrant influx began." Yet, as he points out, the Merseyside police don't want to admit there is a link between sex crimes and foreign men.
Liverpool always seemed immune from so-called cultural enrichment. A few decades ago, there was hardly any. Then, over the past few years, that seemed to change with an almost secret population explosion. Now, the city is somewhat unrecognisable. Part of this is because the Home Office designated Liverpool a dispersal area, aka a dumping ground for those who've broken into the country. As a result, most asylum seekers are sent here while their applications are processed. Sadly, the host population were never consulted or informed. City officials and council leaders would be quick at this point to point out that migration to Liverpool is nothing new. Back in the 19th century, it welcomed 1 million Irish people during the Great Famine. And while this is true, there's one key difference. Irish culture is not alien or incompatible with England.
And of course, the real world impacts, because that's what matters, right? How we live day to day on the culture of Liverpool are now impossible to avoid.
But there's also the impact on culture and social cohesion. Many people from Africa and the Middle East hold the sort of views that, if voiced by a white working class man, would land him in jail under Keir Starmer's Orwellian regime. Yet when they do it, it's deemed almost exotic. Unsurprisingly, this puts the weakest in society in a vulnerable position. For the gay community, it means a new imported hostility. Just when they've achieved societal acceptance, they now have to deal with a whole new group of imported people who oppose them. After all, the majority of Muslims want homosexuality to be illegal, and Africa is routinely condemned by Amnesty International for its attitudes to homosexuality. And of course, migration has also put women at heightened risk of rape and sexual assault. While doing research for this report, I uncovered some truly shocking data, which council bosses won't want you to know. The data shows that in 2015, there were 2,230 recorded cases of rape or sexual assault. By 2022, that figure almost doubled to nearly 5,000. This isn't because local men have suddenly become more predatory. It's because of who we've imported into the city. Some of these incidents are captured on smartphones and shared on social media. For example, these men were forced from a bus for inappropriate activity with a young girl.
This is just ridiculous. This is absolutely ridiculous. Just go. Leave some women and children. Fuck off. Go away. Go away. Go away. Look at him. Oh! Get away. What's your door? Your door.
This man was allegedly caught filming children in a park.
I don't care if your mate's here or not. You don't come and do that.
Okay, you can delete it yourself.
Go
on and say deleted ones as well.
I'll try to delete it.
Yeah, he's taking videos of little kids.
You're a fucking disgrace.
And yes, again, as you can see in those real world examples, today's immigrants are different and they are changing the face of Liverpool.
Today's immigrants are not Irish. Many of them are not even European. Huge numbers of them come from Africa and the Middle East. In fact, Liverpool's rate of immigration from these regions is 25% higher than the rest of the UK, which explains why the black population in Liverpool has increased by 154%.
South Africa, I hate your country.
There's also been a 69% increase of Muslims living in the city, once the Catholic capital of the UK. In 2001, there were 5,000 Muslims. Now, 30,000. If this trend continues, there'll be no need for either of Liverpool's famous cathedrals. After all, Islam is now the second biggest religion here, and Arabic the second most common language. And herein lies another problem. Many migrants have no desire to assimilate. According to the 2021 census, nearly 2,000 people in Liverpool could not speak English at all. A further 10,000 people couldn't speak it well. Half a decade later, those numbers will almost certainly have grown. Just ask the locals.
This is the first time in a good while I've came into the city centre for a good few months now. And I'll be honest with you, I've hardly heard one Scouse voice.
That doesn't make you racist. Doesn't make you far right. And we know what the woke people say. We know what the hard left say. Oh, but what about the Irish immigrants to Liverpool? Well, there is a difference.
Merseyside police have made a disproportionate amount of appeals for foreign men who are wanted in connection with sex crimes. Despite this, they refuse to acknowledge the connection to immigration. On the contrary, they seem to be almost suppressing this fact. When I first drew attention to the parallels between migrant men and sex crimes, Merseyside police almost completely stopped publishing appeals about foreign men. It's almost as if they're trying to hide an uncomfortable truth for the sake of the narrative. This is particularly astonishing when you realise that the head of Merseyside Police is a woman who, like the rest of us, saw what happened in Cologne on New Year's Eve 2015, when 1,000 German women were sexually assaulted by migrants.
Salam alaikum. I'm speaking to you today because I want to reinforce my commitment to protect every member of our Merseyside community.
Sadly, the local media here are no better. BBC Radio Merseyside has said nothing about the correlation between migrants and sex crimes, while the Liverpool Echo newspaper has also failed to cover it, despite being edited by a feminist. This is odd, especially when national statistics already prove that foreign men are overrepresented in crime stats. Data from the Ministry of Justice shows that 23% of sexual offences, including rape, were accounted for by foreign nationals between 2021 and 23.
Wow, it is an incredible documentary which you can watch at the New Culture Forum, but I'm delighted that the host, Peter Lloyd, joins me now for the Uncancelled interview. Peter, so look, it's your hometown, Liverpool.
It is.
And it must be hard for you to actually write those words, Liverpool is dying, but then watching your brilliant documentary, as I've done, really does back up that that is a fact.
Yeah, it's really tragic, Dan. I mean, Liverpool to me is part of the family. It's almost like a human being. It's like a living relative, really, Liverpool. And so to watch it suffer and to watch it kind of ail and be afflicted is heartbreaking, really. And it happened very, very quickly. Like I say in the documentary, for many, many years, Liverpool was majority white. It was 97% white English. The culture was very specific to Liverpool. The humour, the personality, the banter. It was very, very much its own kind of mini country, really, in England. And then almost overnight, it's like somebody turned a tap on, and there were, I'm not exaggerating, thousands of Arabic-looking men, women in veils, burqas, and these were things that you never, ever saw before. It was fine in London, you would expect it in London, which is much bigger and perhaps much more international, but in Liverpool, you would never, ever see a presence of the Middle East or Islam, and yet suddenly, overnight, it seemed to happen, and that is what really sparked my idea for the documentary, because I was concerned. I could see visually the changes, but also my friends who still live in Liverpool were saying to me, Peter, something's going on here. The council are just busing people into the city, and it's a small city. It can't cope. What do we do? I tried to contact the local media. None of them were interested. There was a complete blackout. So I said, right, let's do something with the NCF and use new media to get the message out there. And thankfully, people like you exist and this show exists, so we can get the message out, because otherwise nobody else would know about it. We wouldn't be able to sound the alarm.
No, totally. And the thing is that we speak so much about London, don't we? Because yes, the destruction of London, which was, I believe, the world's greatest city just 20 years ago, is horrifying. But I also always point out what's happening in London is just a macro version of what's happening in all of our cities, really. And I think it's so important, because what's happening in Liverpool, there's a lot of things that do translate over to Birmingham and do translate over to Manchester, and even people in Glasgow now getting so angry about it. What did you make of Joey Barton? I mean, this is really interesting, because you'd admit, Peter, one of Liverpool's most famous residents, but also most controversial, but absolutely scouse loud and proud. And he's saying there in the digest, look, we're close to civil war. We're close to civil war. And he doesn't care anymore if saying that means that people will refer to him as far right. Is he correct?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, absolutely. First of all, I must say I love Joey Barton. I loved him when he was a footballer, and I love him even more now that he's speaking out on these big issues.
He's
because
great.
it takes real courage. I mean, you know this, but it takes real courage to put yourself on the line and say uncomfortable truths. But it's particularly difficult if you're someone like Joey and, you know, you already have a big profile and you're kind of like media accredited, like you're allowed, you know, you're allowed to be a personality because you're approved. He really has much more to lose. So it's very brave of him to speak out, and I admire him for that, even if he is wearing that shirt.
That shirt is quite something. It is quite something.
But you know, Dan, although this documentary is about Liverpool, it's really about every small town and city in the country. It's not just about Liverpool. It is about England. And what's happened is London has essentially become full, and it's spilling over now into everywhere else in the country. So the viewers watching, your cities and towns are next. We have got to do something about this. Otherwise, where you live will become unrecognizable. And when that happens, there's no turning the clock back.
Do you expect, because look, we've got another weekend potentially of uprising, hotel migrant uprising across the United Kingdom. What's going to happen to Merseyside? What's going to happen to the Scousers? You know, they are people, Peter, who, I mean, look at Hillsborough, for example. I mean, do you think the people of Liverpool are going to end up taking direct action and going to be on the streets?
Well, you only have to look back to last summer. I mean, you know, there were riots in Southport. There was unrest in Southport, which is, of course, part of Merseyside, over Axel Rudabakana's disgusting terror act. So the passion is certainly there, the will is certainly there, and the frustration is certainly there. So I wouldn't be remotely surprised. In fact, I'm actually shocked that there hasn't been more unrest, because the social contract is completely broken. The local authorities, the council, the local press, all of these institutions seem in cahoots and seem to be deliberately facilitating the decline of the city. And I think, you know, like Professor David Beck, who you mentioned earlier, talking about the risk of civil war, eventually the people are forced to make themselves heard in an unconventional way and perhaps an unedifying way, and that's when they take to the street. But what else are these people supposed to do if they're being ignored?
100%. I mean, Douglas Carswell said earlier this week, for 20 years, 6 different elections. And I mean, actually, you can go right back to the times of Enoch Powell, where the great British population actually agreed with the guy. We have voted for decreased immigration. Our authorities, the people in charge, have given us the opposite. So at some point, something really major has to change. Breaking today, James O'Brien, the hard left LBC host, has been exposed by his own staff members. Now, this is fascinating because they tell the Sunday Times that this bloke has a godlike complex, that he will not listen to anyone. And I'm thinking, hang on a moment, how is that news? We have known, just looking at the way James O'Brien is on air, that this is a very, very bad man. A very bad man who clearly treats his colleagues terribly. We saw the way that he turned on Sangeeta Miskit in a flash. But things are getting worse because there is no sense of James O'Brien being chastened at all after his despicable anti-Semitism on air. And I was disgusted, absolutely disgusted by the fact that this week, with this unrest in the country, rather than actually looking at the reasons behind what's going on, he instead decided to smear those patriotic mums and dads on the streets of Epping and Essex, saying they are more dangerous than the illegals inside the hotels.
To be so completely at odds with normality that we don't currently have the tools to address it. What do you do to someone who insists that they are living in a state of mortal peril when all of the evidence is that the people they're lining up alongside outside a hotel pose a much greater harm to coin a phrase, to our women and children than the people in the hotel do?
I mean, what an absolute bastard. What an absolute bastard. He hates you. And I think for as long as Global and LBC, the Labour Broadcasting Company, keep him on air as their star presenter, then they hate you too. And in fact, we know it. We know it. Just think of the way that he attacks callers every single day, simply because we voted for independence, taking our borders back when it came to Brexit.
And you're someone who lies awake in bed in Middlesex having weird dreams about immigrants. You're not someone who's had...
You're very rude to me, aren't you?
Well, I am very rude to you, yes, because of what you've done to my country.
What I've done?
And now you're here to tell me you've got no clue about anything.
What have I done? I voted for Brexit. It was 51% against 49%.
You voted for Brexit, and you still cling to the carcass that it could somehow have gone well. And apart from making life difficult for people who don't look like you haven't got a single clue what that means, what you want, or how you'd go about getting it. So how on earth, Richard, could I not be rude to you?
That is what he thinks of you. Switch off. Switch off LBC again. Never listen to them again. Especially if you're Jewish, by the way, or you support the Jewish population after this.
My wife was brought up Jewish, and at Shabbat school in a leafy Hertfordshire town, she was taught that one Jewish life is worth thousands of Arab lives, and that Arabs are cockroaches to be crushed. Whilst young children are being taught such hatred and dehumanization, undoubtedly on both sides, as Chris points out, then they will always be able to justify death and cruelty. And it does indeed start young. But there is a danger, perhaps, that we only ever hear one side of the dehumanization and propaganda processes.
Oh, perhaps it's there, James. No. I mean, you were not spouting propaganda, were you? And actually, this is a guy who has no moral compass. By the way, he started out as a right-winger. He worked on the Daily Express. He went where the money is because, trust me, the money is in the left-wing mainstream media. And he didn't stand by his comments. He didn't stand by the fact that he'd made an editorial choice, as his producers have revealed, to read out that letter. Instead, he apologized like a groveling little gimp.
This is very important. At this time yesterday on the show, I read out a message from a listener called Chris, who said that his wife had been brought up in the Jewish faith and had attended what he described as a Shabbat school. He went on to make further claims about what he said she had been taught in that school. As with all the texts and messages that I read out on the programme, I did so in good faith, but the message has understandably upset a lot of people, and I regret taking those unsubstantiated claims at face value, and I'm genuinely sorry for that. And it is very important that I get that out there, and thank you for your attention.
Well, we know they would have sacked anyone else for far less. They sacked Sangeeta Miska for far less. And James O'Brien has been given the in-depth treatment by the Times of London. In an article headline, "The Making of James O'Brien, LBC treats him like a god." Liberal Britain's presenter-in-chief is accused of letting a listener air anti-Semitism, and colleagues say it isn't the first viral clip to haunt him. And I want to reveal exactly what James O'Brien's staff have said about him, because it does say a lot about how this guy, how the ego is out of control in London's Leicester Square. He doesn't want to be produced. O'Brien is not new to controversy. A decade ago, he was a supporter of Carl Beach, known under the pseudonym Nick, who made unfounded claims that he had been the victim of a sexual abuse VIP ring in the late 1970s and early 1980s. Beach was jailed for 18 years in 2019 for sexual offences against children, perverting the course of justice and fraud. O'Brien, who was unaware of those allegations, would later say Beach was bullshitting everyone. But no, James, most people didn't believe Carl Beach. Now, junior colleagues allege that the most recent mistake arose because O'Brien wants to be in, quote, complete control of his show rather than allowing producers to do their jobs. On other shows, a producer would have removed the message for being clearly anti-Semitic. They'd have made a judgment that it sounds dodgy or asked, "Have we verified this?" one LBC colleague said. You can make a message disappear from the presenter's screen, but James doesn't have that filter, so he sees all the messages directly himself. Another colleague said, he is a presenter who doesn't really want to be produced. Nick Ferrari, who's really popular with staff, is so old school that he still sometimes makes producers print the reader messages out to read, and Nick really trusts his producers to remove anything he wouldn't wish to read out. O'Brien now appears to be something of a Marmite figure with an LBC too. Sources at the station said he was given a dressing down by the executive president Ashley Table King, who is Jewish, over last week's incident, all this though was denied by Global. However, O'Brien's listener numbers have made him beloved by bosses, and his job is not thought to be under any threat given his popularity and talent. James always had an exceptional set of attributes to be a great talk radio presenter, said Maxie Allen, who produced O'Brien's show from 2003 to 2007 and now works for Times Radio. But what made him a star was Brexit. He identified a niche as the liberal voice of sanity. Lots of people loved it because they thought, here's somebody on our side, and lots of others saw him as the embodiment of everything they were railing against, so he fascinated both sides. An LBC employee said, they treat him like a god here. He can do almost no wrong. After the incident, LBC understood to have told employees each message needs to be reviewed by 2 members of staff before it goes on air. A fellow presenter explained that messages often served as a break for hosts exhausted by long debates. You sometimes read out a text almost as a punctuation mark or breathing space without fully clocking the content. And on a subject like Gaza, you get some disgusting messages. James would have been sifting through others that were even worse. Colleagues describe O'Brien's character as a strange mix of assuredness, some said overconfidence, and insecurity. One colleague recalls him boasting about sales of his books. Oh, God. He's an emotional man. If it's a bad day in the office, he's going to be upset, especially on an issue like anti-Semitism. O'Brien had spoken out about anti-Semitism in Corbyn's Labour Party and given a speech at the Anne Frank Trust's annual lunch in 2019. Colleagues say he is obsessive about the performance of his videos, checking how his posts have done on social media as soon as he gets into Global's office in Leicester Square. Tuesday's video, though, must be one he wishes no one had been watching. Peter Lloyd. This whole situation is fascinating to me because, of course, I have a huge respect for presenters who don't listen to producers, right? So I lost my job at GB News because I didn't listen to producers. I wasn't going to be told what to do in my earpiece, and it's a fundamental part of the independent media. But here's the difference with James O'Brien, Peter. He is the head of the witch hunt mob. He is the sort of protester at the front of the queue, demanding that anyone on the right be cancelled, be removed from public life, being completely intellectually dishonest about people like Nigel Farage. Remember, he called the riots last year the Farage riots. He continues to do so. Yet actually, he stokes far, far more discontent in this country than Nigel Farage ever has. And the problem is, he doesn't practice what he preaches, and neither does LBC, because he is completely safe. He is treated like a god.
Absolutely. You've just hit the nail on the head there, Dan. Well, absolutely well done. Well, listen, you're totally right. We hear all the time, don't we, about two-tier justice when referring to the police and the judiciary and the courts. But actually, there's two-tier justice that also happens in the media. You know, that's why you weren't allowed to, produce your own show and use your own journalistic integrity to deliver a story, whereas he can do whatever he likes. He is safe. He is beyond reproach. And he absolutely encapsulates the media elite, the London bubble, and their contempt for ordinary people in this country. The fact that he is treated differently is an extension of the fact that the working classes, the masses, the lower middle classes are also treated differently. It's all connected. And as someone who, like you, also works in the media, I've heard all the horror stories about James O'Brien. Oh my goodness, I could write a book about them. He is one of the most toxic figures in the industry, and yet the industry claims to be very moral and very concerned about mental health and very concerned about safe spaces and safe working environments. I can tell you now, I have it on good authority that James O'Brien is one of the worst people to work for in the media.
Without any doubt. Without any doubt. Because of course, yeah, he doesn't practice what he preaches, and it's always it's always the people on the left, right? Because people always say, oh, surely it's Piers Morgan who's really horrible to work with. Actually, not at all. Not at all. Everyone who works with Piers Morgan loves him, whether you agree with him or not, right? And I disagree with him on a lot of things. But he's always lovely to work with. James O'Brien, complete opposite. And the thing is, what's so fascinating is usually, Peter, have you noticed he doesn't let callers get through who are going to challenge him? So that they're very selective. Like, they purposefully go to callers that I guess would say are not on the articulate side, maybe not as intellectually robust as him, and he purposefully sets them up to make them look stupid. And when he gets a caller who actually does know what they're talking about and does know how to be articulate, I think he can't deal with it. And I wanted to show you this moment where he was totally owned by a farmer, and watch very closely, because what you'll see, and I've worked in talk radio, is even though he's on camera, he's communicating with his producers, and you'll see when the going gets too tough for him, right? When the farmer starts to own him, James O'Brien actually signals to his producers like that. And what he's saying is turn him down, get him off, because he's being humiliated. I thought it's a really fascinating example of how he works. So I'll get you to react, but let's watch this first.
Sing at me again.
Panels, we've had the offers for wind farms.
Well, there you go. Then what are you complaining about?
Because we don't want to concrete over the land. I know you're a townie. I know you're happy living in your liberal elite world of London. But for us, the countryside is the countryside. It's where our food comes from, James.
So you've been offered.
You seem to have forgotten that.
You
seem to have forgotten that, haven't you, James?
Charlie, you
can't
don't.
accept it.
Okay, mate. I'm going to have a
I'm
go.
not your mate. I hate you.
I
think you're an idiot.
Okay.
I think you're a lefty, liberal, woke idiot.
Okay, Charlie.
Let's tarmac the AOMBs. Let's tarmac them. Yeah, get some solar farms on there. Yeah, why not, James?
I think
hey, James, you like immigrants. You probably want to see some homes there as well, don't you?
Well, down with homes.
When was the last time you went to a farm?
I grew up on a working farm. I probably should have mentioned that sooner. I grew up just outside Kidderminster in Worcestershire. The farmers are all around Chaddesley, Corbett and that area.
So what, your dad was a farmer?
Absolutely. No, I've explained several. Do you listen to this programme?
So when you... No, I don't.
Well, how can you have such strong...
I think you're an idiot.
How can you have such strong views about me then?
Because the few times I have listened to you, I heard how you speak to people. You talk over them and cut them off, like you've done to me.
Down with that sort of thing, Charlie?
You are down with that, I know. That's what you love.
I mean down with talking over people and shouting at them.
Oh, I'll shout at you. I'll give you everything that you try and give me.
I've tried to give you a fair hearing.
You haven't. You haven't at all.
Okay.
I pointed the facts to you and you won't accept it.
Okay.
You know nothing, James. Stick in your London liberal lefty wokeism. You know nothing about farms.
Did you see that, Peter? So it was sort of just off camera. They thought it was covered up, but he did that little signal to his producers, and then his volume just got turned down as he continued that rant, because for once, James O'Brien had actually been beaten on his own show. But he doesn't usually allow that to happen, because they screen the calls, and they screen the calls. It's not like, let's get a good call. It's like they only want to put people on who are not articulate, who struggle with their point of view. I think it's really despicable.
Yeah, and it's also further proof that what is being delivered to the consumer isn't actually journalism, it's activism. You know, they are very well curating a show that is furthering their own liberal message. They're not actually interested, despite the name LBC, they're not actually interested in debate and in, you know, kind of a deep discussion about political issues, social issues. What they really want to do is just offer a propaganda machine. And that's just been proven by the fact that James won't allow any dissenters, any heretics on his show. He deems them as beyond the pale. And that's worrying, because you think, well, you're supposed to be this kind of, you know, program that allows people to call in and air their views and gives people a voice. But actually, the opposite is true, that they're censored in a very soft, sinister kind of way. It's Orwellian. And this all kind of loops back to the Online Safety Act. It's like, it's all connected, you know, it's gross.
Yeah, it is all connected, because, of course, James O'Brien's free speech will not be challenged, because the Online Safety Act is designed specifically to target people who are challenging the government narrative, not doubling down and pretending that everything's okay and we can trust Slippery Starmer, which of course we absolutely can't. Breaking today. Woke ITV has been called out for hypocrisy, specifically on loose women for objectifying men. Now, this is really fascinating, isn't it? Because you would assume the loose women are this bunch of feminists, and of course, in many ways they are. But why should there be a total different treatment on their shows in terms of how women are sexualized, how women are portrayed, and how men are? Because surely equality, true equality, means that both should be at an equal level. Well, Peter Lloyd, who tweets under the suffragette tag on X, has exposed what's going on, writing, male strippers on Good Morning Britain, male strippers on This Morning, man upskirted on Lorraine. All happened while kids were watching. None of the women involved were fired, but John Turode, referring to the axed MasterChef host, gets sacked for singing a Kanye West song in the pub. And of course, he copied in Alison Hammond, Lorraine Kelly, and Charlotte Hawkins, who I imagine were completely quiet about this. Now, Peter Lloyd with me today, of course. And Peter, I got my team actually to go and find egregious examples of this, and there were so many. Let's just run through some of them. And while we're doing this, I think it's really important to think, would this be allowed to happen to women in the same way? Just imagine if a daytime TV show on woke ITV paraded women around in this manner, Peter Lloyd. So as we go through some of these examples on ITV, over to you.
Yeah, so I'm so glad you've brought this up, because I've been banging this drum for a while now. I mean, here you can see the images that you've got on. Dan, that is male strippers at 7:30 in the morning, when children were watching before they went to school. How is this allowed? This is absolutely brain frying. It's unbelievable. Male strippers on ITV, a commercial station, at 7:30 in the morning when children are watching. Here's male strippers on Loose Women. I also tweeted a look at that. Why
and she's objectified Nigel Farage.
Can you imagine if that was the male presenter doing that to, say, I don't know, Priti Patel or
they'd be
Angela
sacked.
Rayner?
They would be immediately sacked.
Loose Women, right? A bunch of semi-naked men, all being sexually objectified. Once again, this isn't post-Watershed. This is going out at lunchtime during the Christmas holidays when children are at home. Here's a male stripper on This Morning. 10:30, 11 a.m. in the morning, broadcast to children. Absolutely sickening, and a total and utter double standard. I've been banging on about this for a long time, and the reason I started is because I obviously we both work in the media, Dan, and I was once sent to a recording of a show at ITV many years ago. It was Danny Minogue presenting a show about Boyzone, and I had to go in to try and report on it. And the warm-up act for the show came in, started giving this comedy routine to the audience, and then asked several men in the audience to stand up. He made them strip down to their underwear. He then made them remove their underwear so they were naked. And there were children in the live audience sat next to me. I was kind of pulling my hair out thinking, what on earth is going on here? It was disgusting. It was so inappropriate. I filed a complaint the next day to the head of ITV, nothing. I filed a complaint to the head of the HR department, nothing. I filed a complaint to the press office, nothing. And I've since been embroiled in a conversation with Carolyn McCall, who heads up ITV, and they have offered a lily-livered apology to me, but, it's certainly not a public apology. They haven't offered to change their policy, and this is still ongoing. Only last week, Dan, they had the diver, Tom, what's his name?
Tom Daly.
Daly. Yes. So they have the diver Tom Daly presenting the weather in a pair of Speedos.
Well, I mean, I think that also says something about his talents, doesn't it? As in, he has none. But see, my view on this, right, is that there should be, look, what's good for the goose is good for the gander. And so what I would like to see is there being a very, very clear understanding with the loose women that, okay, because you are now doing this to men, you have to stop moaning about the so-called objectification of women. Do you see what I mean? For me, this is a case of double standards. Like, when I used to be the executive editor of The Sun, I would always be clear that we were equal opportunity objectifiers and would do so quite proudly, right? Because do you remember everyone would complain about The Sun, oh, you have page 3, or, you know, you put Rihanna on the front page in her underwear, Beyonce. I'll be, hang on a moment. The moment Cristiano Ronaldo or David Beckham were doing, you know, one of their underwear ads, it was on the front page of The Sun. So we're equal opportunity objectifiers. I have no problem with that. But what I have a problem with is the fact that ITV constantly go on about the fact that women are being objectified, constantly go on about the fact that women are treated differently in society, when they are the ones that are perpetuating the completely unbalanced treatment.
Right, absolutely. And I agree with you. I am also an equal opportunist when it comes to objectification. You know, we're all sexual creatures. It's absolutely fine to admire physical beauty in men or women. All I ask is that the rules are consistent. So if you want to have male strippers on Good Morning Britain, which I think is probably wrong because of the timing of it, fine, but also have female strippers on. You know, treat the genders equally.
Which would never happen. It would never, ever happen. I mean, this Tom Daley thing is just extraordinary. It would never happen.
It's absolutely astonishing, and it's one of the last great hypocrisies that's happening in the media. And the reason it is allowed to happen is because, like a lot of other institutions, they have been captured by feminists. And, you know, while equality of opportunity is, of course, sacrosanct and it's the basis of a civilized country, feminism is not about equality. It's never really been about equality. It's essentially trade unionism for women. It's Marxist in its roots. It's never been interested in equality. It's only ever wanted female advantage. And it deliberately objectifies men because they think it reduces them and empowers women over them. It's a political act. So when you see strippers on ITV, it's not just for a bit of fun. Part of it is also political.
100%. Well, look at Loose Women. Look at the change on Loose Women. And I had Carol McGiffin on the show recently. She's brilliant. You know, she was one of the original Loose Women. And she would used to have very honest conversations. They would be quite wild, right, on Loose Women back in the day. But now she says that show has gone so woke. She couldn't even be on it because of the way that they presented the world. It was just too depressing for her. Because what they do on that show now, Peter, is make it clear that in their worldview, every single issue is the fault of men. They are allowed on that show to treat men, right, as a homogenous group that is able to be slagged off in a way that no other group in society would be able to be blamed for every ill. You know, no sexual identity, no racial group. But when it comes to men, that show is allowed to go on air every single day and make jokes and laugh about the fact, but also be very, very serious that all of the problems in the world, Peter, are down to men. It happens every day. It's absolutely disgusting. It didn't used to happen. By the way, actually, Loose Women used to be a show, I would argue, that celebrated female empowerment, but also celebrated men. But something changed about 10 years ago when the show made a very conscious decision to go woke.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's really sad to see. And what I find particularly disappointing is, you know, back in the day, feminists would complain about the objectification of women. And part of their reasoning would be, you know, young girls coming up the ranks shouldn't be forced to see this kind of thing because it's bad for their mental health. It's bad for their image. It can increase things like anorexia and the risk of mental health and physical health issues. And it's just not good for young girls to be seeing these things. And yet we're expecting young boys to be able to view male strippers and ripped bodies and to not have that affect their mental health and not expect that to lead them down a path of maybe testosterone and steroids in the gym because they're trying to achieve this impossible body standard. The double standard is staggering. Why is it okay to inflict this kind of subliminal messaging on boys? And what message is it giving them? It's essentially telling them, if you get groped in a pub by a boozy Hindu, then you've just got to suck it up. And that's just the way it is. And I say, I'm sorry, sexual assault is sexual assault.
But it's not treated that way
when women do it.
It's not treated that way, and it's certainly not treated that way when cancel culture comes into play. Interestingly, Peter, you have pointed out another example where a broadcaster is changing its policy, though. So this story was about the fact that woke Netflix bosses axed the iconic scene from Pride and Prejudice remake to avoid objectifying men. And you say, good. If it's wrong to objectify women, then it's wrong to objectify men. Hopefully this is just the start of it. The double standard has existed for far too long.
Yeah, I mean, I've got my fingers crossed here that this is going to be the start of something. I hope it's just nascent and that it's only going to grow from here. But I'm not so sure whether this is just a publicity stunt. Either way, I'm glad it's happening, because that moment where Colin Farrell emerges, from the water in his outfit, in that original adaptation, that BBC adaptation, that's really when I can trace it back to. It was around that time that the objectification of men began. And then it gathered momentum with things like The Full Monty. And since then, it's just got worse and worse. So I'm hoping now that maybe the tide is turning and that there's going to be some acknowledgement that this is inappropriate, because it's just getting worse and worse. And it's getting more vulgar. I'm sorry, I'm very pro-sex, I'm very pro-sexuality, I'm very pro-beauty, but I don't like the idea of children being presented with the image of male strippers at 8 o'clock in the morning. Call me unorthodox.
Well, you just absolutely know that if that happened with women, the loose women would be anywhere. The loose women would be the first on, saying this person should be cancelled. But look, Peter, you have always been someone that have taken these arguments to the mainstream media, sometimes with hilarious results. I've got a couple of your greatest hits. One, let's just turn back the clock, and this probably is the best ever. I have a lot of experience with this woman too. Watch.
Really have a right to be treated respectfully.
We are unfortunately running out of time, but Peter, I just want to get one final thought from you. Are there words that are used to describe men that offend you?
Not particularly, and if there are some I don't like, I certainly wouldn't want them banned. But it always goes back to that old adage: sticks and stones may break my bones, but there will always be something to offend a feminist.
Peter Lloyd. No, that's just obnoxious.
Peter
Sorry,
Lloyd,
you have to give me a chance. That is ridiculous. No, hang on, I won't do your show again if you don't let me respond.
Oh, Kate Smurthwaite is her name. Oh my goodness, that was hilarious. And that was sort of before people were doing those types of debates.
Right. My friends always say to me, Peter, you were the original. You were doing this long before it was fashionable, long before it was trendy to be attacking woke. I wrote a book about, men's rights and critiquing feminism 10 years ago, before it was popular to really be doing this kind of thing. And I was so young then. I was like really putting myself out there. And I was, I kind of look back and think, wow, I was fearless.
My producer just said that is one of the greatest clips in TV history, which is quite a lot of acclaim.
She still won't talk to me, Dan. Honest to God, she still won't talk to me.
Me either. We had so many rows on GB News, because the thing is, on GB News, you have to, because of the off comments. I mean, I don't have to have someone like Kate Smurthwaite on my show now, which is so refreshing. But on GB News, because of the off communists, you sort of have to do that faux balance. And so your more recent greatest hit was actually just on GB News, very similar type and style of debate. Watch this.
I'm not even comparing women's football to men's football. I mean, that would be a humiliation for the Lionesses. Let's look at two really solid metrics to view how good women's football is. Profitability. Women's football barely, it doesn't even break even, despite the fact it's rammed down our throats at every opportunity. In fact, men's football has to subsidize women's football because it can't bring in the cash. If it was so good, it would be able to stand on its own 2 feet. And secondly, if you judge it by performance, the football that we've seen in this UEFA tournament has been atrocious. The Swedish women's team, before this tournament started, they were defeated by a boys under 15 team, 7-1. And when the Lionesses went to penalties with the Swedish women's team, it was laughable. There were 14 penalties. 9 of them were missed. It was absolutely appalling football. I am sorry. I wish them all the best. I hope they have a great time. You know, it would be nice if they win. But please stop this kind of Soviet-style propaganda, which tells us that we've got to believe women's football is good. It isn't. They make the beautiful game ugly.
Look at Don Neeson's
Look at their faces.
Like, you don't actually need to hear from them, Peter. And look, I actually love women's sport, right? But the point that you're making there is that it's up to the market to decide. And what has driven me absolutely mad about the Lionesses is the false equivalence that the mainstream media feels they have to give, because it's woke eating themselves. So it's like ITV have to pretend like the country has stopped for this game, and it hasn't, and it's okay for things to be different, right? It's okay to acknowledge, okay, one sport is bigger than another sport, but there's a game of pretend that is going on in the mainstream media.
It's like a classic example of the emperor's new clothes. You know, the emperor is being paraded around wearing this beautiful suit, when actually they're not wearing anything at all. And we're all supposed to believe this lie that women's football is fantastic and equal to, if not better than, the men's game. I'm sorry, that's just not true. And I'm not afraid to say that. Part of the reason why they want to do this is because of cultural envy. This is yet again feminist driven. They are so envious that men created football, that it became a huge cultural event, that it became a huge commercial success. They hate that. They hate the glory that male footballers get to enjoy. They can't stand men having anything. So that's why they have to say, right, well, we want our equivalent, and it has to be treated in the exact same way, and we have to be paid the same, otherwise you're all sexist. This isn't about football. This isn't about skill. You know, let's face it, the Lionesses are, for the most part, a bunch of mediocre lesbians. This is really about taking something away from men. It's about occupying male space, male cultural space. That's what this is about. It's not even about football. It's about politics.
Breaking right now, Gregg Wallace has accused the British Bashing Corporation of hypocrisy for allowing women to have groped him, made sexual comments about him, while completely destroying his reputation and driving him to the verge of suicide over allegations which he says do not even reach a level where HR should be involved. We're going to get analysis of this bombshell new interview with Peter Lloyd in just one moment, but first watch him make these claims.
Any idea of the sexual references made to me?
No, go on.
On a daily basis.
Like what?
Doing all sorts of sexual. How many times I've been touched by women wanting a selfie? How many times I've been groped? How many times suggestive comments have been made to me? How many female contestants have said inappropriate things on MasterChef? It wouldn't even cross my mind. Would not cross my mind. When I get, now I'm not suggesting that groping is right, but it was happening to me on a regular basis. And this is just extraordinary. So this is what I mean about the idea that like presenters are godlike and they're just throwing their weight around and bullying people. It's just the amount of times when I was desperately trying to build a career in television that I've been shouted at.
I mean, he makes such a fair point, and I actually think it's horrendous, utterly horrendous, what the mainstream media and women, I'm going to call them out, like Asma Mayer and Kirsty Walk, have done to Gregg Wallace. He now says, they should think about this, that he wishes that he had never stepped foot in a TV studio in his life.
Ever stepping foot in a television studio.
Really?
Yeah, mate.
But look at the memories, and you loved the show when you did it.
No, that wasn't worth it. If I'd have known what was coming up, if I'd have known that what I was doing, that was making everybody laugh, and that was giving me all that success, and that I was being rewarded for, if I'd have known that was going to unleash these demons upon me in later life, no way would I have gone anywhere near it. My biggest regret is that I ever went anywhere near a television studio.
And I mean, I have so much sympathy for him, so much empathy for him. And this is what he said about the Prime Minister weighing in on his cancellation.
People think right now I've been flashing young women at work and exposing myself. The last thing I care about is the Prime Minister thinks I'm a misogynist. Mate, that's a massive let-off. It's a massive let-off for what I'm going through.
But he did express his devastation, specifically the women who jumped on the bandwagon of trying to kill him. That's how he feels that his cancellation, that's how he feels his cancellation was designed to do. And specifically, he name-checked Kirsty Walk and Vanessa Feltz. What?
You didn't want to be here anymore?
Yeah, you don't want to be there. And you just want it to stop. You can't see a way through it. The abuse won't stop. You know it's not true. You wonder why people that you worked with, because we've got to remember, people like Kirsty Walk, I would have worked with for 3 months. So I would have thought I was friendly with Vanessa Feltz. I thought I was friendly with her. So it feels like a betrayal. Nobody's stepping forward to speak up for you. No one at the BBC is getting in touch with me. I'm causing major problems for my family around me who are all suffering. And it seemed at times like the best thing to do for everybody was not to be there. For me, but not just for me, for them as well. And what stopped me was considering how guilty my family would have felt if I did. That I actually wasn't helping them. I would have been causing more anguish and lifelong guilt for them, thinking that they could have done more.
Peter Lloyd, I really hope Kirsty Walk, Asma Mayer, Vanessa Feltz watched that and really thought hard. Were a few inappropriate jokes? Because remember, that's what this is about. Walk and Mayer and Feltz are not suggesting for a single moment that there was any form of touching or groping or anything like that. Just some jokes they didn't like, some puerile jokes, some sexually inappropriate jokes. Do they feel that reached the standard of trying to destroy this man, driving this man to the point of wanting to take his own life?
I think it's disgusting. I'm so disappointed in them, and I'm especially disappointed in Vanessa, who
me too.
I've always kind of admired. Really, I mean, she's very clever. She's a very good broadcaster. She has a lot of common sense, and yet here she is really piling into the cancel culture mob. No,
but she believes in it. She believes in it, Peter. I'll just quickly interrupt because I had personal experience with this. I mean, Vanessa Feltz and I go back years. She was at my 40th birthday party. The moment that I was subjected to the cancel culture mob, she joined in. She joined in. Yeah, and it was nothing to do with any personal experience she'd had with me. It's just that she seems to get off on that. And there are people who do, and they show their true colours. And unfortunately, Vanessa Feltz, certainly in my experience, showed her true colours. So I wasn't surprised when she did this to Gregg Wallace.
Well, then shame on her even more then, that's disgusting. And what's also true is a lot of women use these instances as opportunities to get ahead, maybe to, enhance their own profile or to get themselves some media attention. A lot of celebrities, a lot of TV presenters, even a lot of journalists are egomaniacs. We were just discussing James O'Brien, for goodness sake. A lot of these people love having their names in the press. And if they can kind of, jockey for position in the victim Olympics when it comes to so-called, instances of bad behavior, they love it. They love it. And it also gives them a chance to virtue signal. But, I was a quasi-victim. I was an adjacent victim. I suffered alongside so many other people who had to deal with Gregg Wallace. I mean, give me a break. None of these women are weak. None of these women are denied a voice. None of these women are lacking in any kind of resources. They are all empowered. They are all strong.
And Peter, they waited. They waited until there was the mob, until there was the witch hunt, okay? If you had such a problem, then just go public with it at the time. Deal with it at the time. Do not wait until someone's life is being destroyed and then think, oh yeah, this dude said a few inappropriate jokes in front of me 10 years ago. I'm going to go on Newsnight to try and destroy him. If you do that, seriously. And this one's very personal to me because when Gregg Wallace explained the reality of cancellation, right, I thought about my situation and how I felt in those days after Lawrence Fox had come on my GB News show and basically said he didn't want to shag a woman and the whole world exploded, right? Because everything that Gregg Wallace is talking about here in terms of his treatment by the BBC and his treatment of the mainstream media was exactly what I experienced, but just with the employer being GB News. Watch this.
So I lost my job. Newspaper headlines were changing hourly. I had journalists outside my gate. I've got my wife and mother-in-law who live with me. Mother-in-law lives here. She's in tears. Nobody from BBC has contacted me at all, and the phone is constantly ringing with numbers that I don't recognise, and I'm taking a tidal wave of abuse across all social media platforms. I hadn't slept for 4 days. I can't describe the amount of pressure that you are suddenly under. And so I can't possibly properly explain my reasoning at the time.
100%. And basically what he's saying, Peter, is, because do you remember he made a video and within that video he blamed, I think it was middle class women of a certain age for trying to cancel him, and he's trying to explain why he wasn't thinking straight. And my God, I know that. And they all just desert you in that moment, by the way. So all of a sudden, the British Bashing Corporation doesn't give a damn about the fact that one of their biggest stars is on the verge of suicide because they're so worried about someone who was offended by a joke told 10 years ago. It's a very, very bizarre thing that happens when you're cancelled.
It is, and it is traumatic. And the thing is, this doesn't just happen to people in the public eye. It's happening to men all over the country. I know, I have men who reach out to me via email and they say, my goodness, I work for this bank or I work for this corporation and they've just cancelled me after 20 years of service. I had a faultless record, but some middle-aged mediocre woman made a spurious allegation against me and without even really investigating it, they've just put me on garden leave. And I have a family to support. And now my wife is questioning, what kind of person I am. And,
totally. No innocent until proven guilty? None. It just goes out the window.
No due process, no innocent until proven guilty. And then people wonder why the male suicide rate is at a record high. I mean, it's absolutely laughable. But what I would say to men out there who are experiencing this, and even the wives of men who are experiencing this, is that you can come through the other side. Danny, you came through the other side. You're probably stronger than ever now.
Absolutely. And you know what? You're so right. And also, please do not think that this is in any way about hating on women because, the vast, certainly in terms of the support that I was given, the vast majority of women in my audience understood what was going on, understood that this was a witch hunt, weren't at all offended by what Lawrence Fox had said on air. So it's unfortunately just a very, very small group of women. But the problem is, it's also about how corporate insanity works, right? So Gregg Wallace spoke about the BBC, Peter, and he spoke about the BBC in terms of the fact that they are completely out of touch, that they've got no idea what's going on in Lewisham, right? Because they're so in North London. And this is how the whole John Turode sacking then happened. Because it's like, we're going to keep paying Hugh Edwards, but we're going to sack John Turode for rapping a Kanye West lyric in a bar after filming 10 years ago. Watch this.
You can see at the BBC right now, absolutely everybody's been to Guatemala and nobody's been to Lewisham. If you ask people on the street, they would say Gregg Wallace worked for the BBC.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, they've made it impossible for people to work with them. They don't pick up the bill. But they paid Hugh Edwards 200 grand, didn't they? I think I read in your newspaper.
Yeah, something like
Well, I didn't get a tenner, and I did 20 years.
Yeah.
I just got cut off at the end of November.
And in the last couple of weeks, it's taken another dark twist, and your co-host John Turode was fired by the BBC.
Yeah.
What's your feelings on that?
I don't want to comment on what John may have said or may not have said. My sympathies to John.
Is he a racist?
I'll tell you one thing right now. What John Turode is or isn't. John Turode is not a racist. I've known John Turode for 30 years. John Turode is not a racist. And as evidence of that, I'll show you the incredible diversity of the people that he has championed to MasterChef winners over the years. There is no way that man is a racist. No way. And my sympathies go out to John, because I don't want anybody to go through what I've been through.
Yeah.
And John Turode is not a racist.
And Gregg Wallace says he wants the people who complain to think about the consequences.
I just want these people that have complained to go, whoa, hang on a minute, what have I done? Because you would have, me, not just me, but my family, who have had to read about me being a sex case for the last 8 months. My grown-up children, my wife, my mother-in-law, this wasn't necessary. There is no accusation of groping held up. There's no accusation of flashing. And all you people that have come forward to tell these stories over there, what on earth were you thinking? What were you doing? Was I really that much of a baddie that this needed? I don't know. Maybe I was. And if I was, I'm really, really sorry. It didn't appear like it at the time. But it just seems to me ludicrous. If all of this is sexualised language, if all of this is rude jokes, is this what it's about? Because it seems to me, oh look, I don't want to come across as a victim, but I've been through a hell of a lot, and so have my family.
And he says there is also now almost a national game, and people who are going to newspapers try and humiliate public figures.
To not say anything, fine, I can understand why you wouldn't, but when you're ready to, the way you do it is to go to the newspapers. To do what? It's almost as if the public humiliation of a public figure is some sort of British pastime. What's going on? This cannot be the way that you would want somebody with neurodiversity to be treated.
I mean, Peter, I pretty much agree with everything he said, apart from the very end, because I think it doesn't matter if he's neurodiverse or not. Do you know what I mean? I just think no one should be treated in the way that he has been for what he did. Do you know what I mean? Because it's like, Peter, there's no differential in terms of someone who's, for example, accused of rape, although, by the way, I still believe, because we know how many false allegations there are, that there should be that process and everything, but there's no difference in the way the mainstream media has treated Gregg Wallace, from making a joke to if he was like a serial rapist.
Yeah, it's astonishing. It's a real witch hunt. It's like the Salem witch hunt.
Yeah.
Look, I should make it very clear. I love and respect women greatly. You know, I have 3 sisters who are my best friends. I've got nieces. I'm a real mummy's boy, really. But this is like a feminist pastime, and we're talking about a lot of liberal, that's the key word, liberal women who really see straight white men, or just white men now, as the enemy, as the personification of the patriarchy, who are fair targets. And that is why they feel legitimate in destroying them, destroying their character, destroying their career. It's political. To them, it's neutralizing an enemy.
And that is so disturbing. It is really disturbing. But Peter Lloyd, it has been so brilliant to have you on Outspoken today for the first time. And of course, your brilliant, brilliant documentary about Liverpool available to watch now on the New Culture Forum YouTube channel. And by the way, I really recommend that.
Please go watch it.
Yeah, it's absolutely brilliant. Brilliant work. Please do come back soon, Peter Lloyd. So
thank you, Dan.
Thank you very much. Now we're moving to Substack now, because royal YouTube sensation, according to Taz, standing by to reveal why the Daily Mail turning on Prince William and Catherine, the Princess of Wales, while attempting to rehabilitate Prince Harry and Meghan Markle. That is nuts. So we're coming off YouTube and Rumble, moving to Substack, www.outspoken.live. Now, don't worry, I am back with you live. 5 p.m. UK time, Monday, midday Eastern, 9 a.m. Pacific. I hope you have a wonderful weekend. And most importantly, I promise to keep fighting for you.